to my layout. Hey guys, welcome back to my layout.
This will be a layout update for March 2020. Let's take a look at what's new on the layout. So right off the bat, you can see got a bit of a mess going on down here. Right in the middle of doing the scenery for Banff Yard, so there's stuff all over the tracks. Before we take a look at that scenery, I do have one new thing to show you guys. I finally got this SD90MAC-H that I ordered a while ago. Can't run it for you because it's DC only. I still got to get a decoder for it. But man, what a nice model from Athearn Genesis. Pretty crazy taking this thing out of the box. If you would ask me, like even 2 years ago, if we'd ever see this thing in anything but brass, I would have said you're crazy. It's pretty awesome that, you know, such an obscure model like this can get it in plastic ready to run form now. It's kind of mind-boggling. You know, there's only 4 of these CP SD90MAC-H's, so to have one to open a box up and take one out of a box and it's not brass, pretty amazing. So more to come on that. I'll get a decoder for it and get it up and running. Until then, it's probably going to sit in the box for a while. So let's take a look at what else is new on the layout. So just like the last couple months, all my time pretty much was spent here on the Banff portion of the layout, and the majority of it was spent ballasting and getting the terrain done here on the yard section. So I worked my way all the way up to the Mount Norquay road crossing here. So let's take a look at that. So the first thing that I did before the ballast was paint the warning lines on the Banff Station platform. If you go back a couple months, I had talked about how I was going to do this, and I kind of had stalled out and then never really did anything with it. So about to do the ballast, then I realized that these station lines, I needed to tackle them one way or another because they were holding up the ballast. So I went ahead with my original plan, was to just make my own mask out of paper and just went ahead and airbrushed the whole thing. So the entire Banff Station platform's got these warning lines. They've looked different over the years, different eras. 70s and 80s, there was no lines at all. A little less concerned about safety back then. I'm not sure exactly when they first painted the original warning lines on the station, but I'm going for kind of a 2010 era, so they had this kind of 45-degree hash marks and then another line beyond that. If you go there today, they look even different. I think there's a white line now and some thicker ones, and so depending on what era, these lines have looked different. So this is what I went for, and you can see all the way down the platform. Right to the far end of the paved portion of the platform, we've got these safety lines. The idea there is to keep people away from the tracks, because Banff has a lot of tourists, as most of you probably know, and this is a mainline traffic, 45 miles an hour, and you've got these people that are standing, you know, like a foot away from an intermodal train that's going by. So the lines are there to try and keep people back. So I wanted to try and recreate that in HO scale. So this was the mask that I made. And if you remember back to that video, I think it was back in December maybe, or even earlier, but I had made these using Corel Draw. Just printed them on normal 11 by 17 printer paper, and then I used my hobby knife to cut out the hash marks on the mask. So the first 2 lines I did were the long lines that run the parallel lines that run the whole length. So I just masked these the old-fashioned way, and I used 1-inch painter's tape, nothing fancy. A strip the entire length. So I determined where I wanted to put the lines down here, and I started the tape down here, and then I unrolled it all the way to here, pulled it tight, and just masked one at a time. So I did the one closer to the rails first, and then I did the one beside it, and then the final step was to do the 45-degree hash marks like here on the template. So I had made the template on Corel Draw, and that's 100% to scale. I had the 2 different versions actually, so this is the 2010 version that I like, and here's the modern day one, which is what I can tell from photos 2018 and beyond. So I went with that one, and I just took my hobby knife and just carefully cut out each one of those little hash marks. Once I had the template cut out, I tested it, because you should always test stuff like this before you actually try it, because my station platform's already weathered, so if I mess this up, it's a big deal. It would be a huge pain in the butt to repaint that. So, tested it on a black piece of just scrap that I had. It actually turned out pretty good. So I went ahead and just took the plunge, 17 inches at a time, because that's the length of this paper. I did the whole 160-inch platform. So I did about 3 at a time, and then I let it dry. And I found that the trick about using paper, because this is thin, just thin printer paper, nothing fancy about it. It would get so kind of saturated with paint that it would start to kind of fold and warp a bit. So after I did 3, I took it off, let it dry, and then I'd set something down flat on it and let it dry. And that way it kind of held its shape. And that was it. That's how I did that. I'm happy with the way it turned out. There was really no overspray. Using my airbrush to paint straight down, and very little overspray at all. And because that Corel drawing is 100% to scale, it looks really good. Like it ended up painting the edges of the ties, which is prototypical, just like the real thing. So I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. Here's just a little bit closer view of the finished product with the ballasted track and everything beside it. So once I got that warning line painted on there, I went ahead and just ballasted the whole yard. So it took quite a bit of time. I'm using 2 different ballast colors. I like gray number 50. This is kind of the main color. And then the other color I use is this blended ballast, Scenery Express number 50. I mix them myself. I got just a 4-liter milk jug here, and I just pour it in and kind of that's what I use to blend it up, to kind of give that not too light of a gray and not too dark of a gray. Just working off prototype pictures from the actual Banff yard. The ballast is glued and laid down. I used 50% water and 50% white glue. I've actually switched to Mod Podge because it seems to work a little bit better. So 50% water and 50% Mod Podge. It's all glued down and dry. So the last step will be weathering this with probably some colored grout and giving it a little bit more kind of uniqueness, and again just working off prototype pictures I have of the yard. You know, the 3 tracks here, especially this track 5, this is where they store the snow plows and flangers and stuff like that, and those things are probably always leaking oil. So if you look at the satellite pictures, you know, these 3 yard tracks in Banff, there's just like oil stains, and they're really dark compared to the main line, which probably has fresh ballast on it. So I do the ballast and the dirt terrain. I do that all together as I go along. So that's the terrain's all the way done up to Mount Norquay Road. So that was the main thing that I worked on. I've done a little bit of static grass, and you can kind of see it's just starting to take shape now. So I'm laying that down kind of at the same time when the glue is still wet. I go along and do a little bit of static grass. I'll take a closer look. So that's a pretty good view of the yard ladder, and you can see some of the static grass starting to appear there on the right. I like to do just a little bit at a time, because it seems like with static grass it's really easy to overdo it based on my own personal experience. So the only other thing I was working on the past month, I just started this, but this is going to be the speeder shed at Banff. So it's not used anymore, but back in the day they had a little four stall speeder shed at Banff where they kept their speeders for track inspection and all that. So same construction technique that I use for just about everything. Like the ice house, I'm just using old styrene that I've got, 1/16 stuff with kind of a ribbed panel. And first I rough up the shape of it, the general shape, and then I will go ahead and Photoshop, because I've got photos of this building, so I'm going to Photoshop the walls, the roof probably. So that's what I'm going to be working on this month, is getting this little speeder shed done. There's another interesting building that's going to go behind it. It's a smaller shed, like maybe an 1/8 the size of the speeder shed, and it kind of goes off backwards towards this way. And it's a locomotive watering station. Nowadays they only use it for Rocky Mountaineer, but back in the day they use it for the Canadian as well. So that's a cool building. It's got some neat signage on it, you know, a big sign that says locomotive watering station inside. So I'm going to capture that and have that on there as well. So it'll be another little building that I work on this next month. So closer view just to show it just mocked up. All I've done is just roughed up the 4 walls so far. Good old fun tack there, you can see in the back. That's that stuff they use to put kids' pictures on the wall. Works so good for, you just quickly want to stick it together, see what it's going to look like, make sure it fits on its spot. And it's actually quite durable. I just put 2 pieces on the inside of it. Let's see. But it does the job just for mocking something up just for a short term. So that's everything we've been working on down here over the past month, guys. It's been kind of a weird month. I'm sure, as you know, there's got a world crisis going on, pandemic. We're kind of keeping a close eye on the news. Like, everything's canceled. All our kids' stuff is canceled. And the silver lining is it's been like minus 30 degrees Celsius up here. So that's more of a good reason to bring the kids down here to the basement. I've actually got a big crafting station set up to keep them busy down here with me while I'm working on the layout. So we're doing all right. I hope you guys are all safe. You know, it's kind of scary. So, and when I say crafting, I'm not kidding. We're doing some pretty heavy duty crafting down here right now. So it's good to keep the kids occupied. So it's something we're doing. It's pretty easy when it's minus 30 degrees Celsius outside, like you saw in the intro there. I mean, it's been nasty up here, real cold. So even though all the kids' indoor stuff's been canceled, we're still keeping busy down here, keeping their minds off of it. You can see we've discovered popsicle stick hot glue art. So me and the 5-year-old have been you know, experimenting with building different things out of popsicle sticks. So that's fun. Anything to kind of keep our minds off of what's going on and hunker down here in the basement. So that'll wrap up this layout update, guys. Stay safe, look out for each other, wash your hands. As always, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.